Hi, welcome back. We're going to continue on with the weapons of World War I. So the next one we're going to look at is the Dreadnought. The Dreadnought is a warship. It was used for bringing supplies overseas. It was an easy target for U-boats, also known as submarines. They usually traveled in convoys, which was groups of ships, and the Dreadnoughts were often surrounded by other battleships for protection. The next weapon, most students like this one. This is the flamethrower. The flamethrower actually only projected a few meters, which made it practically useless in trench warfare. As you can see from the image here, it obviously can't go to the other side, across no man's land. The only time that it was useful is when one group was attacking the enemy's trenches. Unfortunately, if you were the one who was holding the tank, which is this part right here, unfortunately, you'd be a target. Most enemies would try to shoot you and you'd blow up, which is terrible. The flamethrower was first used by the Germans. Next, we'll take a look at the submarine, also known as the U-boat, or if you want to say it in German, the Unterseebooten. Subs were very effective. Basically, they could destroy supply ships crossing the Atlantic, so they could attack the dreadnoughts. The first submarines were used in a battle, the one sea battle of World War I, which is the Battle of Jutland. Tanks. Everybody thinks tanks are going to be a very effective weapon. Unfortunately, they're not as great as you would think. Tanks actually started to be used in warfare since armored cars could not cope with the terrain. The first tank was actually nicknamed Little Willie, and it had a Daimler engine, a Caterpillar track, and it needed a crew of 3. Its maximum speed was 3 miles per hour, and it was unable to cross the trenches. So it was not a success. Typically, it would get stuck somewhere in between no man's land and would be a sitting target. The more modern tank was not completed until several weeks before the end of the war, and it was called the Fiat Tipo. It could fit a maximum of 10 men, had the first revolving turret, and could reach speeds, get this, 4 miles per hour, so much faster than the original 3. The next weapon, this is the machine gun. The machine gun was a very effective weapon of World War I. Unlike today, machine guns were not the main weapons for soldiers because they needed 4 to 6 men to man them. Typically, they were so heavy that they had to be put on tripods, as you can see in the image here. They could fire up to 400 rounds per minute and had firepower of basically 100 guns, which made them a very effective weapon in World War I. They were fast, easy to reload, and they fired at long ranges. The weapon that was the most popular, of course, was the repeating rifle, or the basic rifle. They were good weapons. They shot long distances. Unfortunately, though, they were very hard to reload, and the trenches made it even more difficult because typically it would be wet and muddy, and that mud would get into the guns and then jam them. Canada's rifle was called the Ross rifle. It was an excellent sharpshooting rifle, but pretty much useless in World War I because it was one of the worst weapons to get jammed with mud. Other types of rifles didn't jam as bad, such as the Lee Enfield rifle. It's a British rifle. So typically what would happen is the poor Canadian soldiers would have their Ross rifles, which would jam in the mud, and they would then try desperately to find Lee Enfield rifles so that they could survive. So those are the weapons of World War I. Hope you've enjoyed, and you can now move on and decide which you think is the most effective weapon of World War I.